Hi, I'm Bradley,
And I'm Brendan.
and on today's episode of Story Proof, we are talking about Godzilla.
Godzilla, yep.
I'm so excited. So, I guess a little bit of a disclaimer up front. So, we're not talking about Godzilla just as a character. We're not talking about any particular one movie. We are talking about a group of movies. And I'm just going to tell you, they're my favorites. That's why we're talking about them. So we are going to start with the two movies that go up to the Millennium era. So Space Godzilla and then Godzilla vs. Destroyer. And then we're going to talk about pretty much from there to now.
Yeah, this is very much going to be a sort of you-centric episode, Bradley. I have seen most of the American versions. I haven't seen Godzilla vs. Kong or the newest one that just came out, Godzilla X Kong.
Yeah.
I've seen a couple of the Millennium movies now.
The ones I made you watch.
Yeah, the ones you made me watch for this podcast. But yeah, this is really going to be sort of me just sort of learning more or less, and you sort of explaining, what it is you love so much about Godzilla. That's not to say I don't enjoy Godzilla. I've enjoyed basically every one that I've seen, and I'd very much intend to go back and watch the original Godzilla, especially after some of the research that I've done leading up into this from the filmmaking standpoint. But yeah, I do not have the breadth of knowledge that you do. Listeners, if you can tell, I'm sure that Bradley's very much overjoyed too.
I'm so excited. I'm trying not to just giggle like a madman over on the side of this.
And I will say beforehand, I don't know how long this episode is going to end up being. I know you had hours potentially of detail that you cut down for this thing.
Yeah, and I tried to. When I first started, to be honest, I was just like, I want to talk about Godzilla. Why? Because Godzilla. I love Godzilla. I've always loved Godzilla. I will always fucking love Godzilla. And then when I started doing a bit more research into it, I'm like, okay, this could really evolve into a history of Godzilla, and that's not really what I wanted it to be in the beginning. I really did just want to talk about my favorite Godzilla movies.
The movies, basically the Millennium era movies.
Yeah, it really is. The two before, so one from 94, one from 95, up to now.
Yeah.
I will also say I haven't seen the animated ones. So Shin Godzilla, I think it's Godzilla Earthbreaker. I haven't seen those, and I haven't actually seen Godzilla -1 yet.
Yeah.
Tried so hard to catch it in theaters, and where we are located, it was in theaters for a very short time.
Yeah.
And I was in a show, couldn't freaking make it. And I also haven't seen Godzilla X Kong yet, the newest one that just came out at the time of this recording. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah.
I will say Shin Godzilla. I know a lot of people love it. Oh god, the evolutionary forms of Godzilla gross me out in that. I want Godzilla. I do not want this weird thing with little baby arms and giant eyes. That shit's weird to me. But I gotta admit, the scene where his atomic breath kind of starts out as fire, encompasses the entire city, and then turns into okay, that shit's pretty cool. I gotta give him that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you have no idea.
Yeah,
So very often his atomic breath comes out as a big beam out of his mouth. In that one, as he's evolving, when he starts, he's looking down at the ground, and it just looks like fire coming out, and it seriously encompasses the entire city, and then it turns into a thin beam that destroys a ton of stuff, and then the energy starts coming out of his spines on his back, and it just shoots in a ton of things, and he spins, and it destroys everything. I know a lot of people say that the Shin Godzilla is the most powerful Godzilla out there. I haven't seen it, but based on the clips I've seen, it's kind of hard to argue against.
Just based on the description alone that you just gave, it seems like it's probably the case.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. Yeah, so we are going to talk about a number of historical things that go into Godzilla. Some of what are commonly referred to as the big three. So the original director, producer, and composer, who did also come up with the iconic Godzilla roar, one of my favorite things. I actually used to have the Godzilla roar as my alarm tone for a while when I was in college, and one morning it went off, and my roommate like threw something at me and was like, change your damn ringtone. Scares me when it wakes me. It's so loud. So I did change it, but that was a good 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Tell you what, you'll never sleep through your alarm when Godzilla's roaring at you.
Probably not.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
No.
Also, we've mentioned a few times in episodes that, we speak English. I struggle to pronounce some names. I'm a bit more confident in these than I was with others, but please forgive us for pronunciation errors.
Yeah, we're going to do the best that we can.
Yeah.
And we apologize for any offenses that might come from that.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I butchered the entire Japanese language. I'm so sorry. I'm trying my best. But yeah, I do know that it's interesting because I feel like you and I both kind of got into Godzilla with the same movie, but then you were like, cool, that was it. And I was like, I need more. And then I went and started watching the entire Godzilla catalog after that.
I assume you're talking about the 1998 TriStar film?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, which isn't really even Godzilla. It's
a good starting point, though.
It's something. Yeah. I think everybody who kind of grew up in the 90s who knows Godzilla probably watched it at least at one point. This is the movie with Matthew Broderick and Jean Reno, where Godzilla, quote-unquote, takes over and destroys New York. Yeah.
Dude, the marketing for this was everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Taco Bell commercials. I still have the cup holder that is one of the ones that you stick in the window of your car, and it sticks on the inside of the car, and it's just this giant Zilla cup holder. I still have it. It is upstairs right now.
I remember seeing billboards that was like, his foot is as long as this bus, or he's as tall as this such and such building or something, just kind of building up the grandiose nature of it. It was a very clever marketing campaign to sort of be like, okay, this is an American take on Godzilla now.
Yeah.
And so you're just kind of trying to sell it, because that was supposed to be the start of a new trilogy of films for TriStar.
Spoiler alert, it wasn't.
It didn't work out very well. Godzilla 98 was not well received. It did not do well at the box office. I think the most damning thing about this movie that I've ever heard comes from Siskel and Ebert, the well-known film critics. They had previously criticized several of Roland Emmerich, the director's films, including like Independence Day and stuff like that previously, and not given them so many favorable reviews. In Godzilla 98, they have the mayor character. It's Mayor Ebert, and his toady is named Gene, who's always the one who's always given him like candy and stuff like that, trying to calm him down. So it's obvious parodies of Siskel and Ebert, but he doesn't do anything with it. So on the show, when they were criticizing the movie, they make a point of saying, if you're going to satirize us, at least have the monster squish us or something. Like, I can't think of anything that's more embarrassing in some ways than that, of saying, like, you couldn't even rib us the right way.
Like, come
with
on,
this movie.
man.
Like, nothing worked.
Go big or
about
go
it.
home.
Like, you very clearly had the plan to put Hank Azaria under the thing's foot. Like, have it squashed, Mayor Ebert. But anyway, yeah, not a good movie. They ended up abandoning plans for the...
They did have the animated show for a while.
Yeah, they decided to make that animated show, and I remember the animated show.
I remember being on TV.
And I remember enjoying it. I don't know. It followed one of the Godzilla babies that survived at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And so they tried that to sort of be a sequel series. They never really made a third movie. I think they ended up just licensing one of the Japanese films and then re-releasing it again in America.
Of course.
Adding their own footage, I think, too, maybe.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the end of the American attempt for a little while, at the very least.
But two fantastic things came out of that. One is that Toho saw that and was like, oh, we can't let that be the end of
No.
So then that came out in 98. Well, then in 99, which is Godzilla 2000, I will say for the years that I'm giving on some of these, they are based on the original Japanese release dates. Some of these, if you look them up, you will see different years. A lot of times it does it into maybe a Japanese release and a worldwide release, or a Japanese release and then like the American release. So, a little bit of grain of salt with some of the years that we're giving. Yeah. These are the Japanese release dates. But yeah, Japan was like, well, we can't let them end on that.
No.
So then they came out with Godzilla 2000 Millennium, and then they gave birth to, in my humble opinion, the greatest era of movies ever. The Millennium era Godzilla movies from 99 to 2004. The second thing that came from it is that it got me into Godzilla.
Yeah.
So this was of an age, for all you young whippersnappers out there, before Netflix was the streaming service that it is now. They sent you these things called DVDs, and they sent them in the mail.
Okay, DVDs aren't like this massively foreign object. It's not like VHS tapes or something.
Okay, that's fair. VHS tapes aren't that old. Oh no, maybe we're just old. I swear to God, sometimes I think of us sounding like the two old puppets from the Muppets who just...
Statler and Waldorf.
Yes! Who just
stand up there and heckle everything all the time.
I think about that so often. But back when Netflix was sending you DVDs in the mail, my family was doing it, and obviously we're big movie buffs. My family is as well. I know yours is as well. I was very determined to watch all of the Godzilla movies.
Yeah.
So I, on Netflix, way back when, started going through all of them. And I literally started at the beginning, because now if you search for Netflix, they're like, oh, we don't have this, but we have this instead, because they rotate out their catalog.
Yeah.
Dude, back then, I don't know if I ever looked for anything they did not have.
Yeah, they were it was very much Blockbuster, but online, and they just sort of sent it to you. Man, biggest fumble in the world. By the way, that Blockbuster didn't buy them when they had the chance.
Dude, it is crazy to me now to think that they would send you DVDs in the mail that were in a package that were meant to be opened a certain way, and then when you're done, you stick it back in, and you seal the same package, and then just like send it back.
Yeah, it's basically like when you order something from like Amazon, and then you need to return it. You're basically just throwing it back in.
Yeah, back in the same thing and sending it back. Dude, there were so many times where like I would get a movie on one day, watch it, and it would be in the return mail the next day because I want the next movie.
Yeah.
But at the time, I went through the entire Godzilla catalog. To be honest, a number of them I haven't watched since then, particularly some of the older ones.
Yeah.
Some of the, Godzilla doing the shrimp formation and then breathing air and flying away. Not my thing. We were talking about the smog monster earlier. Fucking hate the smog monster so much. Some of those earlier ones I don't care for too much. And I think at that point, I pretty much saw everything from the original 1954 Godzilla up to probably Godzilla 2000, because that had been 99. I think it was about that time that I watched everything. Most of the ones before Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, I've only watched once.
No.
Biollante, I've watched a few times because I do really enjoy that one. A few of the Mecha Godzilla ones I've watched a few times. I fucking hate King Caesar. I don't like Jet Jaguar, so those I avoid. Son of Godzilla is the worst Godzilla movie in the fucking history of Godzilla movies. I hate it so fucking much.
My understanding is that a lot of fans agree with you on that.
Dude, it's not good. Like, I do not like that version of the child of Godzilla. I do like Baby Godzilla and Junior Godzilla that they use in like Space Godzilla and Destroya. But yeah, so that was like my history with Godzilla, and I never stopped. A little while later, I started watching the Millennium era. One thing that was really big for me were Godzilla video games.
Yeah.
So they had the Godzilla, I think it's like Save the Earth, Godzilla Destroy All Monsters Melee.
Yeah.
Our friend, whom I'm going to mention again here in a minute, Chris, if you're listening to this, fuck you. I still have PTSD from fighting against you in these fucking games. I love Space Godzilla. There is something about... I mean, Space Godzilla's got some big old birthing hips in the movie. Like, to the point that some of the shots I'm like, that looks a little weird. But I love Space Godzilla. I think his design is so fucking cool. His powers are cool. Chris used to play as fucking Destroyer, which sucks ass, because Destroyer had those stupid, like, oxygen destroyer mines, and they would just juggle you. If you got hit with one, this bitch would pop out like 10 more, and you would just blah, 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 blah. And then I would drop crystals, and if I got like 2 or 3 crystals, I'd zap him. Dude, I am not a fighting game person. No. Chris is a fighting game person, and this was one of the only like 2 games that we would play that we were so evenly matched. It was ridiculous, and I hated it. Oh, we used to fucking go at it, man. Sometimes, like, oh, I'll play as Gigan on this one, get my ass kicked. All right, back to Space Godzilla. Yeah. He's like, oh, I'll be Godzilla 2000 for this. Oh, got my ass kicked. Back to Destroyer. It was literally this and Soul Calibur 2.
Yeah.
Where it was the same thing. I would play as Spawn, and he would play as Nightmare. And if we played as anyone else, we were probably going to lose. And then we'd be like, fuck it, I'm going back to my main. I'm going back to the one I'm good at.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we used to play those all the freaking time. I got really into the Millennium era movies because from playing those games, I got into Space Godzilla. And it really is Space Godzilla to now. We also had a number of very good American-made movies come out a few years ago. It's crazy that to me, I really, really liked Godzilla up until Godzilla Final Wars.
Yeah.
And then after I watched that, I'm like, this is the greatest fucking thing that's ever existed in the history of mankind. This is the greatest movie of all time.
No.
I don't actually believe that, but I feel it. I feel it in my jellies. I fucking love Final Wars. Also, a funny thing with Chris is I remember when we were taking our computer classes, I wasn't paying attention. We're on computers. I'm looking up Wikipedia pages for weird shit. And I remember looking one up for Space Godzilla, and it would put, like, their height. Here it is. Their weight. And I remember Chris looking over it when I was there on the page, and it's like, wait, 5,000 kilograms up to 2.5 million. And Chris was like, they could just say they don't know. Like, the range that, if it's like 10 to 12 pounds, okay, cool. 5,000 to 2.5 million? Like, I can hear Chris's voice still. They could just say they don't know. That is one of the funniest things I think I've ever heard. One of the funniest moments. And that's so funny. But yeah, Godzilla is one of the most iconic dudes ever. I fucking love Godzilla. I constantly think about the line from Thor Ragnarok where it's like, Hulk, stop smashing, you idiot. But big monster. Dude, I have used that against you like 1,000 times in the past few weeks. Why do you like these movies? Big monster. Why is this so enjoyable? Big monster.
Okay, I haven't put it exactly like that.
I know, but there are so many where you're like, oh, the human is the whole storyline. I was like, I don't give a fuck. I'm here for the big monster.
Yeah, I know. It was specifically Final Wars because Final Wars' actual plot is bonkers. It's like these mutant aliens.
And see, that's the one I think is pretty good.
It's mutant aliens who are sent out to fight all of the kaiju as they're popping up and whatnot.
Yeah, and they fight the lobster, and then Godzilla absolutely obliterates everything else, as he should.
Like, it's bonkers. The Godzilla 2000, the other one I really watched in preparation for this. The human plot's incredibly ridiculous.
I can't argue that one.
It's just... But that's just me. When I'm looking at movies, I'm looking at the plot. I'm looking at the story.
These are not the movies to do that with.
These are not the movies to do that. That's just the film nerd in me coming out.
I will honestly say from the Japanese made movies, if you are looking for like plot, there's maybe 5.
Yeah.
Like the original, I think the plot's really good.
Yeah.
Some of the earlier ones, like Return of Godzilla, I think is a pretty good plot.
Mm-hmm.
The first Mecha Godzilla one is where I was like, okay, this plot's going to be a bit much. The Mothra stuff where they sing and some, okay, whatever. Oh my god. The first All Out Monsters Attack one, the story is kind of but like the Biollante one, I do think the story for that one is really fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think Final Wars, because the one thing I like about Final Wars is the humans are trying to participate in the fight and they're actually doing something.
Yeah.
Godzilla versus Destroyer is kind of similar in the sense that the humans are actually accomplishing a bit of something. Usually, they just get in Godzilla's way.
Yeah.
Or they're like, oh, we gotta fight Godzilla. And then Godzilla's looking at King Ghidorah like, really? I'm the one you're gonna attack?
I'm the problem.
Yeah, fuck you guys. But yes,
yeah.
this story for most of these movies is not what you're there for.
Yeah, and I get that. And I do enjoy the ones that I've seen. Like, Godzilla Final Wars is fun. Godzilla 2000 is fun. Because it is just watching Godzilla just fight things and destroy buildings.
Particularly Final Wars.
Yeah.
Final Wars, like half of it is just a montage of Godzilla destroying everything.
Yeah. The more American ones like 2014 and then Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Yeah.
Are a bit more plot driven.
Yeah.
Than anything else.
That's fair.
And I think that's why I kind of gravitated more towards them. I don't remember not being as keen on King of the Monsters.
Because it's not as good.
Yeah.
The 2014 one, I think, does a really good job of, if it's what you're there for, the monsters are almost, or the kaiju, they're almost like in addition to the story.
Yeah. Because
you don't tend to focus on them as much. But then when you do get to see them, it's awesome.
Yeah.
That final freaking Muto kill is the best Godzilla kill in the history of Godzilla kills. Yeah. And with it being so story driven, I'm still fucking mad as shit that they killed my homeboy kind of early on.
Bryan Cranston.
Yeah, they killed Bryan Cranston. I think a little too early.
Yeah.
Because his story, with his fucking wife, and it's sad. Yeah, it's genuinely sad.
And you can't. This was at the height of Bryan Cranston's popularity with Breaking Bad. So you're just kind of sitting here. Oh, they got Bryan Cranston to be in this thing.
Yeah.
And then you had Aaron Taylor Johnson, who was kind of big from being in what's that superhero movie that he did?
Where he was Quicksilver?
No. This was before.
Oh, Kick-Ass.
Yeah, Kick-Ass.
I was so confused. I was like, how do you not know that?
No, this was a year before Avengers: Age of Ultron came out.
See, that is a little weird because of the siblings playing a married couple in this one.
Yeah, Elizabeth Olsen and Aaron Taylor Johnson would go on to play
brother and sister
in Avengers: Age of Ultron, but they're husband and wife in Godzilla 2014.
That's not weird at all.
It's only weird if you make it weird.
It's weird. They made it weird.
Who made it weird?
The casting directors.
Anyway, yeah, but you have Bryan Cranston as like the big star, and then you basically go psycho on him and kill him a third of the way into the movie.
Yeah,
and it's just at that point in time with Bryan Cranston being as big as he is, you wanted him to at least be involved in some way in like the conflict a bit more, instead of just setting up Aaron Taylor Johnson's character to be like the big hero running through everything.
Yeah.
But
no, you can't win them all.
Yeah.
I do like the American made ones. I will admit I enjoyed Godzilla vs. Kong because God help me, I love watching that big ass monkey get his ass kicked.
I don't understand why you hate King Kong.
Because he beat Godzilla 1,000 years ago, and it's bullshit, and he deserves to be put in his place. I do not actually like... I do not dislike King Kong.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen Skull Island, but I should probably get around to that one. I thought his weapon was cool.
I haven't actually seen Godzilla vs. Kong, so...
Oh. Shit, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, let me tell you. He gets his ass beat, and then he gets his ass beat, and then he gets his ass whooped, and then he gets his ass crushed.
Yes, I've gathered that from our conversations about this.
God, so beautiful. I'm not going to lie. I enjoyed that for the same reason. I don't like... This is a little bit of an off-topic thing. I don't like Superman very much. Mm. He's too perfect. He's too powerful. He's too strong. Batman v Superman, oh my God, I love watching him get his ass whooped. Oh, yes. That's all I'm there for. That's a shame because I fucking love Henry Cavill. But man, I love watching Superman get his ass beat.
It's kind of crazy with Godzilla. You know, it's been about 70 years now. This is the 70th anniversary, actually, this year of when the first movie came out. And there's been like, 40-some odd movies that are a part of the... If you count like everything.
Yeah, it's close.
Like
it's either like mid to high 30s or it might be actually 40.
Yeah, so this is like a pretty significant like pop culture icon and like world culture icon. Like everybody knows who Godzilla is, and
as well they should.
It's similar in a way to King Kong. Like everybody knows who King Kong is, even if they've never seen the movie. I know you're looking at me like, yeah, how dare you?
Look. When you talk about Godzilla versus Kong, King Kong is a large monkey.
Yes.
That's it.
Okay.
Godzilla is a giant, god-slain dinosaur dragon creature with atomic breath.
Okay.
How is that a contest? Godzilla wins. Hashtag Team Godzilla.
But
I just love Godzilla so much.
Yeah, I think everybody's gathered that. It's just funny when you think about Godzilla kind of in the cultural context. He wasn't supposed to be like this big pop culture icon that stood the test of time and was just known the world over for anything. He started really just as, honestly, a pretty like standard giant monster flick.
Yeah.
The movie came out in 1954, so think about the context in which it came in. This is just shy of 10 years after the end of World War II, and so Japan is just reeling from the dropping of the bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the end of World War II, just dismantling everything about their society. There's a lot of social anxiety. There's a lot of like nuclear trauma involved. Can't imagine why.
Yeah. It's so weird to do this episode after Oppenheimer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very ironic that we ended up doing this right after Oppenheimer. I don't think we really considered that when we laid out the initial like schedule.
I've also been trying to do Godzilla since day one.
Yeah,
I even proposed just making a Godzilla YouTube channel personally. I did not actually do that.
You did not. That would be an interesting exercise, but we're not going to do that right now.
No, I love Godzilla. I love talking about it. I do not want to be a Godzilla historian.
Yeah.
It's not in my future.
The story of Godzilla is kind of interwoven in some ways with the story of this one fishing boat that went out in 1953 off the Bikini Atoll. The U.S., the Soviet Union, and England, I believe, were all in the process of testing weapons that were, at this point, 1,000 times more powerful than anything that was dropped on Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Mm-hmm. The U.S. specifically was dropping them on the Bikini Atoll. And so one day this ship was out doing tuna fishing, and all of a sudden they see this bright light in the distance coming from their ship, and then all of a sudden bits of coral start raining down all over them, all over the ship. And as they're heading back to Japan to sell off their tuna catch, they start to experience radiation poisoning. They start to experience radiation burns from where the coral touched their skin because it's just the fallout. At this point, the tuna industry in Japan just collapsed because who's going to buy potentially irradiated fish? Yeah. Like, nobody's going to trust that. It was at this time that a Ray Bradbury story called The Beast from 10,000 Fathoms was adapted into a movie in Hollywood. And it follows a group of people who drop a nuclear bomb in the Arctic to test it. And it happens to wake up a long dormant dinosaur. And that dinosaur goes rampaging through,
That's
society.
Nothing like Godzilla.
There was a movie that was made jointly between Indonesia and Japan with Toho Studios, and they were getting ready to produce it and put it out, and all of a sudden Indonesia had some issues with the movie and it got pulled completely. And Toho was desperate to make some money at this point because they needed to recoup what they lost from not being able to actually put out that movie. So between that, the popularity of The Beast from 10,000 Fathoms, and the re-release of 1933's King Kong that made like boatloads of money for RKO Studios. I know, I can feel you seething right now.
I hate King Kong.
All of this brought the producer of Godzilla to want to make a monster movie, because obviously monster movies must be very popular if the King Kong is making all this money, if the Beast from 10,000 Fathoms is making all this money. So the producer, Tanaka, got together with a popular writer in Japan, Shigeru Koyama. And he had already written a short story called The Jira Monster. And so they took both aspects of The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms and Jira Monster, the short story, and they combined it to write a story called The Giant Monster from 20,000 Miles Under the Sea.
Totally different.
Also, very much runs off the tongue. Like, that's a excellent title. But even then, with all this, they were afraid to make this movie because
cowards.
They were afraid to go ahead and make this movie because, number one, there was a lot of, as I said, nuclear anxiety. Pretty much the only movies that had touched on the nuclear bombs and everything else at this point were a bunch of documentaries about the aftermath of Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Mm-hmm.
And there was also a lot of anti-American sentiment in Japan at this time.
Can't possibly imagine why.
Post-World War II. So that mixed all together between that anxiety and that anti-American sentiment. Why would you go forward with taking a movie about nuclear fallout based off of an American property? You need to be able to make money off of it. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
But boy, did it work.
In part to, as you refer to them, the big three.
Yeah, so the people commonly referred to as the big three are the original director, the original producer, and then the person who wrote the music for the original Godzilla is also the one who came up with the iconic roar sound for Godzilla. So, this is the pronunciation game now. The director was Ishiro Hanada. The producer that Brendan actually mentioned a little bit ago when he said Tanaka, it is Tomoyuki Tanaka. And then the composer of the music is Akira Ifukube. So there is a little interesting thing with two of these. I don't know why I put my hands together in very like evil mastermindness when I said this. So we mentioned a little bit of timeline-wise where we're going to be talking about mostly the Millennium era. Well, the Millennium era started in 99 after the 98 TriStar American Godzilla. Well, the last two movies of the previous era before that were Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla in 1994, and then you've got Godzilla vs. Destroya in 1995. Very sadly, those are the last two movies that would ever be done by Tanaka as a producer, or that would Japanese movie that would come out while Akira Ifukube was still alive. So it is surprisingly, I don't want to say fitting because that feels maybe a little rude, but it is remarkably symmetrical that the end of what was going to be probably the end of Godzilla. And of the original three, two of them actually passed away during the time before the Millennium era started.
Yeah.
That's just a little creepy.
It's a little ironic.
Timing wise was a little perfect for that. Also, these three individuals, dude, they were very, very involved with the Godzilla franchise for, most of their lives.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were all involved in some way from the original 54 up to Godzilla vs. Destroya from 1995. Just to give you an idea, I wrote down the movies, the Godzilla movies that Ishiro Hanada directed. Are you ready for this list? It's Godzilla, King Kong vs. Godzilla, Mothra vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, Invasion of Astro Monster, Destroy All Monsters Attack, and Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, this very much became a big part of the latter part of his career.
Yeah.
I know his last movie overall as a director was that last one you
Terror
mentioned,
Terror
of Mechagodzilla. He never really directed again after that. He worked with his friend Akira Kurosawa on some other movies at that point, but
yeah. And it is very interesting as well with the movies that he directed, because I mentioned that the 1954 Godzilla is not a fun movie.
Yeah. And he didn't want it to be.
Yeah. What I was going to say is that it's interesting that even some of the ones that he directed, Godzilla does this weird thing where like some of his movies are very serious. Some of them are flat out like you can tell they are trying to push into the realm of horror movies. And then some you have Godzilla jumping up and down and dabbing and doing flying low kicks. It is a weird tone sometimes throughout these, and sometimes they shift mid-movie.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that the ones that he directed, some of them are on the goofier side, some of them are more of them are on the serious side. But it is very interesting to see, the fact that he was involved for much of this process, the producer for much of this process, and it's just so interesting that you do get all of those like drastically different tonal movies, even under their umbrella, even while they were working on it. I think it's very interesting. But yeah, these three guys, man, they did so much for like the world of Godzilla, and I just respect the hell out of these guys. Can't pronounce their names, but love these guys.
Yeah, I know the director. I'm sorry, his name again.
Ishiro Hanada.
Hanada.
Oh, Honda.
I was about to say.
My screen's too far away.
Ishiro Honda. I thought it was Honda. It's interesting, especially for Honda, because I know his background primarily before Godzilla was in like just sort of day in the life of pictures, and then a lot of like wartime romance stuff. So he was
weird to think of.
He was a weird choice for a lot of people to really helm Godzilla, and as you said, it's not. When you think of Godzilla, a lot of times you think of like the goofier aspects. You think of just no real plot, no real anything like we've discussed before earlier. But
monsters. Well, also one thing for a lot of Godzilla movies is it is Godzilla versus Megagears. Yeah. Godzilla versus that one's just Godzilla, and the only monster in that one is Godzilla.
Yeah,
there are most of the movies in which Godzilla is there. It's very much. This is so goofy, but I always think of like the Alien vs Predator movies.
Yeah,
particularly the first one where it is the aliens versus the predators, and then the humans are just kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
So then they almost view the predators as like the good guy, despite the fact, by my calculation in that first movie, the predators killed a ton of people and the aliens killed not that many.
Yeah.
But the predators are the quote-unquote good guy. Most of these movies, Godzilla is viewed much more close to the good guy.
Yeah.
A lot of them some of them he's flat out like called the Protector. Other movies, they have the Guardians who have to rise up against Godzilla.
Yeah.
So there are a few movies where Godzilla is very much the bad guy, the villainous force. That first movie is definitely the one where it really is just people desperately trying to fight back against this huge monster who's attacking everything.
And from a film history standpoint, it's really interesting to think because both Beast from 10,000 Fathoms and Godzilla kind of kicked off this run of like big monster movies in like the 50s. At this point, I know there was one about ants, like giant ants running all over the place. I can't remember exactly what
I know exactly what you're talking about, the old black and white one.
Yeah.
It's a lot of puppetry, miniatures, which is not going to go anywhere in the world of Godzilla, but it is a lot of movies using practical effects as best they could for their time.
Yeah.
And the black and white ants, I can see it in my head. People screaming.
Yeah. So when talking about Godzilla, there are four sort of eras in terms of where the movies fall. They don't necessarily line up precisely with the end and beginning of each era in terms of when they began in Japan, because the Showa era refers to the era that was in Japan during the reign of Emperor Hirohito. And Emperor Hirohito passed away in 1989. But the last of the Showa era films was in 1975. It was Terror of Mechagodzilla.
Which coincidentally was the last one to ever be directed by Ishiro Honda.
Yeah. And the gaps are kind of funny in a way because, number one, you have a gap in time for each era, but then you also find that each era kind of has its own tone when it comes to how it handles Godzilla. The next era is the Heisei era, which is after Emperor Akihito takes over, Emperor Hirohito's son. And the Heisei era technically begins in 89 upon the death of Emperor Hirohito. But the Heisei era in terms of Godzilla movies actually is considered to begin in 1984 with the return of Godzilla.
Woo!
And this runs through the early 90s
95
to about 95.
Yeah.
And this is where you had, I know you spoke highly already of Biollante.
Yeah. It's Return of Godzilla from 84, Biollante 89, King Ghidorah 91, Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla from 93, and then Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla 94, Godzilla vs. Destroyer 95. I will say, by the way, if you are looking through a lot of these Godzilla movies, the Mechagodzilla ones get a little ridiculous because you've got You've got Godzilla Tokyo SOS, which is mostly a Godzilla and Mechagodzilla movie. You have Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. You've got Terror of Mechagodzilla, where he fights Mechagodzilla. You've got Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. There are so many versions of basically the same. It's like when they do Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the Texas Chainsaw 2 Words Massacre. It's the same thing, and they just keep calling it slight variations. It drives me crazy. But anyway, it's fine.
Anyway, then that era ends in 1995, when, for all intents and purposes, Godzilla was basically killed off. And they kind of killed off Godzilla Jr.
No,
I mean
they
kill him off, and then he comes back at the very end in like a post-credit scene or something.
Yeah, he gets better.
So I think
we're gonna talk more about that one, but yes.
Ostensibly he's supposed to be the Godzilla that's now in the Millennium era.
Yes.
And the Millennium era, as we mentioned before, comes as sort of a response to TriStar's Godzilla 98.
Yeah.
Where it begins in 1999 with Godzilla 2000, and it goes through 2004 with Godzilla Final Wars.
Woo! Greatest movie ever!
And obviously it's called the Millennium era because it spans the millennium.
It's also because it's perfect in every way, but yes.
And then after Godzilla Final Wars, there's kind of another lull in Godzilla for quite a while. Yeah. You actually get the American Godzilla from 2014 that we discussed previously.
Mm-hmm.
And then Japan gets to what is called the current era of Japan, which began with Shin Godzilla. It had the Godzilla anime trilogy from 2017, and then, of course, Godzilla -1, which just came out last year.
Yeah, I will also say I do now have their names in front of me. So Shin Godzilla is from 2016. And then the anime trilogy, so Godzilla Planet of the Monsters from 2017, Godzilla City on the Edge of Battle, and Godzilla the Planet Eater, both from 2018.
Yeah.
And then, yes, you do have Godzilla -1 from 2023.
Yep. And as of now, that is the last Japan-released Godzilla movie. I'm sure there are more coming.
There have to be.
So, especially since Godzilla -1 was so well received.
Yep.
Last year, it even won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects.
They should have had a second Oscars just for Godzilla -1, so they could give it every award known to man.
And I appreciate the fact that when they accepted their awards, they had little Godzilla puppets.
Dude, it's so cute. It's so cute.
Like that was fantastic. Apparently, when they were walking around Hollywood all week leading up to the Oscars, they still had the Godzilla like toys with them, and I'm sure it was just fun.
Dude, that's so cool.
I do want to check out Godzilla -1 because I really like the idea. It takes place in World War II,
mm-hmm.
and sort of it's basically a prequel to Godzilla.
Yeah,
it seems like in a lot of ways.
Also, I will say the streaming date is coming up soon.
Is it?
I think it's early May.
Oh, good.
Finally.
And then, of course, now the most recent releases in terms of Godzilla are the original American features, which Godzilla 2014, Godzilla King of the Monsters in 2019, Godzilla vs. Kong, and just recently this year, Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we are in terms of discussing how each era is broken up. I know primarily we're going to focus on the Millennium era.
The best. Yes. For me, my obsession with Godzilla really starts with Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla from 1994. Space Godzilla, like I said, one of my personal favorites. The Space Godzilla movie is really cool in a lot of different ways. So you've got, when you've had Mechagodzilla up to this point, sometimes Mechagodzilla is a thing that pretends to be Godzilla, and then it turns out it's wearing an outer layer. Sometimes it's controlled by aliens. Sometimes it's created by aliens. Sometimes it's its own sentient thing. Sometimes it is piloted by humans, very much like a Power Rangers.
Isn't that the one that it is in Godzilla vs. Kong or something?
Well, that one's sort of a weird amalgamation of a couple, because it's controlled by Serizawa's son using the skull of one of the heads from King Ghidorah, and it's like a psychic link thing, and then it backfires and fries him. It's fucking weird.
I'll give him credit for originality, though.
Yeah, even with the design of Mechagodzilla in that one, I gotta give it to him. It's different.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but it's different. But yeah, so Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, we have something different called Mogira, that it is sort of... I don't want to admit it, because you make me mad when you say it. But when you're like, this looks like Power Ranger shit. Mogira really looks like Power Ranger shit. Because
I say it lovingly, because you know I love Power Rangers.
It really does, though. Yeah, when I showed you the smog monster earlier, you were like, wow, that really looks like something right out of... Yes, it does. But yeah, in Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, you do have Mogira, that is a kind of a miniature Mechagodzilla. It can also split into like two different pieces, and it can fly. It can be... So in that one, Space Godzilla comes down, and the idea behind it is that you're going to see a lot of this, and it's so funny how many of these monsters are like, Godzilla's DNA merged with this, and now we have this monster. Godzilla's DNA merged with this, and now we have this monster. Oh no, we merged Godzilla's DNA with this, and now we have this monster. Because literally, Godzilla versus Space Godzilla is Godzilla's DNA ends up in space, morphs into things, comes back as Space Godzilla. In Godzilla versus Destroya, Godzilla's DNA mixes with little crab dudes and becomes a bunch of crab dudes, and boom, Destroya. Destroya is like the weirdest. Well, Biolante's pretty weird. I do want to say, though, by the way, because I am starting with Space Godzilla in 94, I do really have to give a shout out to Godzilla vs. Biolante. That was one I did not remember very fondly, and in doing this, and like doing the research and reading and watching a lot of things that people have talked about, everyone loves this movie that I was like, maybe I am misremembering. I absolutely was. Especially story-wise, it is one of the best Godzilla movies. The design of Biollante is very different than I remember it being. I did not remember the big toothy maw thing at the end.
Yeah.
I just remember a bunch of plans and being like, oh, gross. But that one is particularly good. I really do like that one. But in Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, his DNA has become one with the heavens and has become Space Godzilla, and boom, Space Godzilla is here.
Sure.
Yeah. It's a very big oversimplification. This one, you do have... I believe in this one, they call him... Because there's Son of Godzilla, and then like Baby Godzilla, sometimes referred to as Little Godzilla, and then in the next one, he's called Junior Godzilla.
Yeah.
So, by my understanding, this is not the Godzilla from Son of Godzilla. This is, I believe, a new small creature. He is fucking adorable. The one from Son of Godzilla will give you nightmares. That is not a well-designed... This one is so fucking cute, and Space Godzilla kidnaps him, and I'm like, how fucking dare you take this adorable little... Space Godzilla, so... If you guys haven't noticed, I try to work the word yeet into all of these episodes. I literally wrote notes for this movie, and I was like writing...
You were trying to find a place to put the word yeet in.
I got such a good one, too. I was, like, writing down Space Godzilla's powers. I'm like, he straight up just has, like, telekinesis. At one point, he just picks up Godzilla and yeets him across the city. And he does. That's not even taken out of context. Dude, so a lot of these monsters show up, and as far as, like, abilities, they're pretty... Like, honestly, Godzilla pretty much boils down to two things. He's
Yeah.
big and strong, and he has the atomic breath.
Yeah.
Space Godzilla is one of these dudes that comes along, and he has some type of deflector shield.
Yeah.
He's got all the different crystals that he can summon and draw power from. He's got telekinesis. His breath weapon is interesting. I rewatched it recently. He never misses with his breath attack. Not a single time. Most of the monsters in this, it's very much like a beam that comes out.
Mm-hmm.
His looks like a bolt of lightning, and sometimes it actually comes out and will like do a big cursive loop on itself and then hit Godzilla, and it is like fucking sniper shots every time. He never misses with it. He can also turn his crystals into missiles. He can also make crystal cages. Space Godzilla is the best.
I remember fondly from playing Destroy All Monsters.
Yeah, I used to wreck your shit as Space Godzilla. Chris was the only one who could stop. That's not true. Neither of us were very good at the game. Like
you and I never played that game together.
Oh, we didn't?
No.
I was gonna say, I remember I downloaded it recently. Just got my ass handed to me by the computer, like on easy. I was like, man, this is a humbling experience. But it's fine. But yeah, Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, I love it. I love the fact that, because a lot of these monsters have fairly unique designs. This one, when they call it Space Godzilla, it's really cool that this is exactly what I imagine if a Godzilla formed in space. This is exactly what it would look like. It's so cool. The birthing hips is still a bit weird, but all of his powers are really cool. The fact that the humans with Mogira, they actually do some helpful shit in this one, I think it's really good. The little Godzilla, the baby Godzilla that they have is adorable. Mm-hmm. I just think this one's a really, really good movie. Again, I am a bit biased because I just love Space Godzilla.
Yeah.
The next one, Godzilla vs. Destroyer from '95. Fuck this movie. This movie makes me so sad. So this was the one that, yes, they very much advertised it as
the end.
Yeah, this is Godzilla dies in this one. And spoiler alert, in case you think they're joking, Godzilla fucking dies in this movie.
Yeah.
And it is not like it is so fucking sad.
Yeah,
because it's almost horrific. It's so fucking sad when it so in this one, some of the story stuff behind it is his radiation levels are now getting to a point where he can't control them as much. So when you see Godzilla in this movie, you can see like patches of his skin that are glowing red. You can see the radiation almost like seeping out of him.
Yeah, it's basically a nuclear meltdown.
Yeah. This one also is Destroya. As much as I love Space Godzilla, I will openly say that Destroya, in my humble opinion, is the greatest fucking monster other than Godzilla in the Monsterverse. I like Destroya more than King Ghidorah. Destroya is such a fucking unit. The only thing that kind of kills me about him is I love his final form. All of his other ones I think are just okay. He's got the various small crab forms. He's got like the medium crab form. He's got the flying crab form. Hold on. Literally, when I wrote this down, I wrote down all like the different versions of it that he had. Mm-hmm. So when I wrote it down, I literally wrote Destroya wrecks shit. Multiple forms. Small crabbies, flying crabbies, big walkie crabbies, and then big ass fucking creature of death. That is the evolution of Destroya in this movie.
Yeah. I mean, he takes out both Junior Godzilla and Godzilla.
Yeah, so he does. Well, technically, he doesn't kill Godzilla.
Technically not, but I mean,
yeah, Godzilla overloads to defeat Destroya.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, Destroya is super resilient. Destroya also kind of like dwarfs Godzilla in size. He is fucking huge. This is one of those monsters. God, American people or Japanese, whoever's doing it, please bring this into the Monsterverse. I don't want King Kong. I want Destroya. Have Destroya just show up and insta-nuke King Kong, and you can be like, oh, he's a real threat. Also, I should point out, so in the original 1954 Godzilla, they use a weapon against Godzilla called the Oxygen Destroyer.
Yeah.
In this movie, it is explained, sciencey stuff, that the Oxygen Destroyer being used is what has partially created Destroya. Mm-hmm. So it's very much like this is the results of our actions. I think there is a line in it about like paying for our sins. Yeah. I think there's a line. If not, it's something really freaking close. But yeah, Destroya in his kind of middling form, he gets blasted by Godzilla Jr., But before he does, he basically like punctures Godzilla Jr.'s chest. And I will say Godzilla Jr. in this one, it's great because it's literally the design of Godzilla, but smaller, and his spikes are really small. So I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. But he absorbs the DNA of Godzilla Jr., and that's when he comes back as the fucking Destroyer. And yeah, he kills Godzilla Jr. He takes him and drops him into, I think, like a baseball arena thing and blasts him, and he's done.
Yeah.
So then Big Daddy Godzilla comes up and just destroys Destroyer. There is a really funny video that I sent you. I think I showed you about when they're using the puppets.
Yeah.
There is a scene where Destroyer wraps his tail around Godzilla and is flying around. Yeah. There's one about like how Destroyer could really be defeated. They miss with the puppet and they fly it into like a pole and it just like breaks the freaking Destroyer puppet over this. It's very funny, but God, you know someone just almost threw up thinking about having to fix this poor.
Oh, yeah.
That part sucks, but it is very funny in the video.
The big thing I remember outside of Destroyer and Godzilla, obviously, in this is there's that one shot where they're showing the computer or whatever showing a dang.
Oh my God! Yes.
Like the CGI in this is particularly bad, just because there's a helicopter for I think it's a news broadcast or something, and they show the helicopter on like this monitor at the military station, whatever it is, and it's the worst CGI I have ever seen in anything.
It looks almost like stock image.
Yeah, it
nonsense.
It looks like the first pass of a Pixar movie. Have you ever seen like the first passes from like Toy Story, where everything wasn't fleshed out yet?
No.
It's kind of scary. It just, and the thing that gets me about it is they then cut like immediately to a shot of the helicopter itself.
Yeah.
So why can't they just take the shot of the helicopter, superimpose it on the monitor, and just give us that? I
don't know, man.
It's a ridiculous thing for me to harp on, especially in a Godzilla movie, you know. But it's just.
I got nothing for you. That's fair.
It stands out to me, and it bothered me when we watched the scene recently.
I think the news chopper bothers me because they spend so much time flying around, and I'm like, there are laser beams going everywhere. There are Godzillas dying left and right. This dude's a walking reactor. This dude's fucking flying, and you're like, in the air, in this general vicinity, great place to be.
Well, you know, when have the humans in a Godzilla movie been intelligent?
Fair.
Maybe the first movie.
I was trying to think of an argument. I'm like, nope.
Maybe the first movie.
Yeah. But well, they created Destroyer, so. They didn't know that, but. So yeah, in this one, there is a thing, you gave me so much shit for it, because the humans create these like cryo lasers, which that's not oxymoronic at all. But they try to shoot Godzilla with them to like lower his temperature to try to kind of even out his radiation levels. So then their plan is, well, if he does go absolutely nuclear, if we blast him with them at the right time, it should limit the explosion. Well, there is a moment where Destroyer is getting destroyed by Godzilla, because this is, if you've seen Godzilla King of the Monsters, where he's just got the Mothra power like emanating from him, and he's not even doing anything, and it's just destroying. It's actually very similar because it destroys Ghidorah's wings in that. Yeah. And this, Destroyer tries to leave, and the humans are like, nope, and they use the cryo lasers and like destroy his wings, and then poor Destroyer's there while nuclear Godzilla's just like, you killed my son, prepare to die. So yeah, they just fucking obliterate Destroyer. Yeah. He is gone. But then fucking Godzilla dies, man.
Yeah.
And it really is. It's so fucking dark.
It's brutal. Like,
because
you see his skin melting.
Yeah, it's like it starts doing these zoom-ins on like the spines on his back. I will say, when I say spines in this, I don't mean like spine in the middle of the back. I mean like spines coming out of the back.
It's like on a stegosaurus or something like that. They have the spines.
Yeah, but they start melting, and like Godzilla, and the music is. Whoever wrote this music, fuck you. It is so sad. I imagine it's probably the original composer. The guy I spoke so highly of yesterday, fuck that guy. This shit's so sad. And this beautiful music is just soaring, and it's so sad. And Godzilla just like melts off of his fucking skeleton. He lets out a last very like sad roar.
Yeah.
As he just fucking like dissolves off of his skeleton, and then his skeleton drops, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah, it's up there in some of like the most like brutal.
Yeah.
Like
I want to see big monsters. I want to see this.
I compared it to, and it affects me more because I love Jurassic Park, as you might remember from my top 10 favorite movies. In Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, when they're
leaving the
island and you have the Brachiosaurus rear up, and like I'm tearing up now just thinking about it because it's just so sad.
Dude, for both of them in particular, the music just absolutely sells it.
Yeah.
But the kind of good thing about it, though, is they are able to contain his radiation levels enough that he doesn't, wipe the city off the face of the planet. But there is a lot of radiation that still emanates from him. Mm-hmm. And the final scene of the movie is you see that has somehow revitalized Junior Godzilla. So there's a thing where, like, I think the shot's really cool and the sound editing's good because it's quiet for so long as it goes up on him. And it's basically Junior Godzilla showing that he's alive now and he's kind of, like, almost dancing. That part. The movement, I don't know if I like it or not. But we do see now that Junior Godzilla is back alive. And then, that goes pretty much into the Millennium era, where now we have the new Godzilla. So, that was in 95. They take a break. TriStar does what TriStar does. They're like, oh, okay. All right, we're back in it.
Yeah.
So then we do start the Millennium era. This is my era. I will say there are particular ones in this that I like. Really, there's only one that I'm just kind of meh about. Godzilla against Mechagodzilla from 2002. I think it's fine. The thing that kind of kills me is that the next movie was Godzilla Tokyo SOS, which instead of just Godzilla and Mechagodzilla is now Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, Mothra, and then there is another monster that I had to look up because I'm like, why don't I remember this dude's name? Oh, he's literally a dead body. Like, you see him on the beach, his like throat's been. It says Kamibas. I had to look it up because I'm like, I will say I pride myself on knowing most of the names of these monsters, particularly obviously the ones that I like. But that one, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? And I'm like, oh. It's almost like a beached whale thing.
Yeah.
Very, very like
it's very,
in a shark movie.
It's very Jaws 2.
Yes. We're like, oh my God, what took a bite out of this? You're like, well, I don't know. We're going to find out. But that is not the first one. You do have Godzilla 2000, the Millennium, which came out in 99. You do get Orga. Orga is awesome. He's so ugly. Oh, he's so ugly.
Yeah, this is the weird spaceship that becomes like a Rancor looking thing.
And yes. Rancor, I think, is a remarkably accurate description of him. He very much tries to absorb Godzilla throughout the movie. He's got I think a unique design because his arms are huge.
Yeah.
Like, he just manhandles Godzilla in this movie.
Yeah.
This is also with the Millennium era where we're starting to get into a lot of I still think very good CGI, like atomic breath weapons. When Godzilla does cool stuff, they're like, and rock music in 3, 2, crank it! Godzilla atomic breath, guitars. Shit's cool. But yeah, this is the one where the one dude screams, Godzilla! As he gets crushed on the building. Whatever.
That guy needs to become a meme. I will make him a meme.
That guy deserves an Oscar for that performance.
It's just the battle's over, everything's done. Godzilla walks over to a building where all the main human characters have gathered. This one dude is just looking at him, screams Godzilla, and then Godzilla, like, I guess, does Godzilla crush the building or does the building fall in on itself?
I don't remember. I never even thought much about it. I'm like, cool, Orga, yeah. And you're like, this guy. I'm like, that guy. I don't remember that guy. But yeah, I think the end of this one's really cool, where Orga opens his mouth up. I will say, if anyone is watching this and wondering what it looks like, if you've ever seen the movie Psycho Goreman, when he opens his mouth up, it looks almost exact. It's a good movie. Okay, wait a minute. It's a fun movie. It's a ridiculous movie, but it's a fun movie.
You're right, though. It does look very similar to that.
Yeah, very much in the way that it's almost like his mouth unhinges, and it looks almost like a trash bag or something with how it just opens up. Yeah, he tries to absorb Godzilla, and he's doing a pretty good job. You see him, like, starting to grow the spines. Godzilla just goes very Jonas and the Whale and gets his mouth inside of Orga. and then just obliterates him from the inside out.
Yeah, it's actually kind of similar. Doesn't Godzilla in 2014 do that to one of the Mutos?
So in the last Muto kill in 2014, he holds its mouth open and then does the atomic breath down until it basically literally decapitates the Muto.
He doesn't go directly into like the Muto and go and obliterate him
but
from the inside.
Pretty similar thing though. Yeah.
That's what I think. But
yeah, so that's Godzilla 2000. Then we get Godzilla versus Megaguirus, which this one hurts my feelings a bit because this is one of my favorite ones, but apparently I am very much in the minority on that one. People do not like this movie. Megaguirus is basically a very large wasp-like creature that it moves very fast. I will say some of the CGI on its movements kind of bad. But I like this one. There's not a whole lot to say about this one. There are Megaguirus, and then I think it's got like little miniony bugs that it has. It's not super great. It's not super bad. It's just kind of in the middle. I do like it. I really like the one where Megaguirus has this. It almost makes me think a little bit of in Godzilla King of the Monsters when Rodan is attacking Mothra, and then all of a sudden Mothra has that one stinger. Yeah. So Megaguirus has something kind of like that it uses to, I think, maybe like poison Godzilla a bit. And then at one point he goes to like try to get Godzilla, and Godzilla outsmarts him, and just fucking like basically bites Megaguirus' ass off. And then at that point it's just toss him, blast, done.
Yeah.
The next one, oh god, the next one has my least favorite Godzilla. The next one has a Godzilla kill that honestly upsets me just as much as Godzilla's death in Destroya. Dude, Baragon's so cute. Baragon's so fucking cute. He's so adorable. And Godzilla just brutally murders him. I mean, it's hard to watch. You haven't seen this one, have you?
I have not, no.
So this one, by the way, this is one of the ones where we're going to see it again in Final Wars, where the Japanese movies just straight up fucking make fun of the 98 TriStar one. There are some lines early on in this one where there's a truck driver that sees Baragon like cut through a tunnel in front of him, ends up killing a bunch of bad bikers in the process, whatnot. And someone's like, "Oh, is this Godzilla? Oh, I thought Godzilla was in America." Or the Americans saw Godzilla, and one of the people were like, "Nah, the Japanese scientists looked into it and like basically said it was bullshit." Which is very funny, but it does also kind of show you that Zilla exists in this continuity.
Yeah. Sets up Final Wars.
Yeah. But this one is a little weird because I mentioned earlier about the idea that sometimes Godzilla is the bad guy.
Yeah.
This one, it is the monsters working against Godzilla. We do have King Ghidorah. We've got Mothra. We've got Baragon. Okay, you don't know. Baragon is adorable. A lot of people refer to him as almost like a dog. He walks on all fours. He's got big, like, dog-looking ears. He's just cute. And
the picture you showed me earlier kind of made me think of like an armadillo almost.
That's fair.
Like that.
Yeah, he's kind of like because Anguirus is a similar thing, but Anguirus is much more dinosaur-like because he's got a lot of spikes. He's got, but Baragon, I think he's one of the guardian monsters in the MonsterVerse, and he goes up against Godzilla, which historically does not go well for people, and I mean he's trying to stop Godzilla from rampaging, and because this one Godzilla's rampaging, destroying cities, killing people. Baragon tries to fight him and very quickly gets overpowered. Dude, Godzilla is like curb stomping this poor dude. He tries to like get away, and Godzilla grabs him, throws him on the ground, kicks him again, and then just atomic blasts him into pieces. I do not enjoy this. This one is weird because King Ghidorah is kind of the good guy. Boy, that sounds wrong.
Yeah, really.
That just sounds wrong to say. Yeah, this one's a little. I will say this one's a little bit of a blind spot for me because I haven't seen this one in a long time. I think the Baragon thing I was like, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch. Look what they did to my boy.
That's fair. It's like watching a movie where like the animal dies at the end or something.
Yeah.
I can only do it so much. Like, yeah. I've watched Marley and Me a couple of times, but it breaks me.
Well, don't watch this one because Baragon's way sadder. Baragon's just so cute. And then, yeah, you do get Godzilla against Mechagodzilla in 2002. Again, for me, I think it's perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly forgettable. I do like Tokyo SOS more. Godzilla Tokyo SOS is the one, because a lot of people know that I love Godzilla movies. A lot of people know I love horror movies. Mm-hmm. I've had a number of people say, if I don't watch horror movies, but I maybe want to get into it, what's a good, like, starting movie for that? I will say Cabin in the Woods is always the one that I suggest, because first off, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, it's
so
a
it's
parody.
Not super horrific. But it also technically explains every other horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's just enjoyable. For me, I've always said that Tokyo SOS is like the gateway Godzilla movie. It is the one where you do get that poor dead creature on the beach. You never really see him do anything. But this one, you know, you get, I would say, in the realm of Godzilla and, like, specifically Godzilla monsters. So for me, not including Kong, I do kind of think King Kong is his own thing, and then they have a few things. Yeah. I would say that Godzilla, Mothra, King Ghidorah, and Mechagodzilla are, like, the 4 biggest names. They're the ones that appear the most. They're probably the most well-known. Obviously, everyone's going to have their favorites. Hashtag Space Godzilla. Go Team Space Godzilla. But this one is a movie that has Mechagodzilla and Mothra and Godzilla. Mm-hmm. I think it's a good movie. It's a Millennium era. I think the CGI in it is pretty good. The music is awesome. I think this one's really, really good. Then you get the greatest cinematic masterpiece the world will ever know. You get Godzilla Final Wars from 2004. You give me shit all you want. This movie's perfect. You guys remember the scene at the end of Avengers Endgame? Because I know if you're listening to this, you've watched Avengers Endgame. You know where I'm going with this. Where they do the Avengers Assemble, and everyone is there. This is that almost. They are missing a few. It's kind of hard to bring Destroyer back. He is in pieces. Even though he walked it off before, but whatever. So, I mean, the list for this movie is absolutely massive. You've got Kamakuris. You've got Manila. You've got Hedorah, Ebera. You've got Zilla, which the American Godzilla is in this.
Yeah.
Not for very long. You've got Mothra, Gigan, King Caesar, my personal least favorite. You've got Rodan. You've got Kumonga. You do have something that is referred to as Monster X that they... I wrote down Kaiser Ghidorah is what they end up calling him, which I'm a little about, because I think the design for Monster X is awesome. To just have him turn into a paint job version of King Ghidorah, I'm like, I'd have done it a little differently. Also, when Gigan is in this movie, he's got a serious, like, tech upgrade, and he looks really good. I mean, Godzilla blows his head off, so get fucked. And yeah, King Caesar is one I don't like very much. He just looks kind of like a really bad werewolf outfit type thing. It's weird. He also has this very specific ability where in one of the Mechagodzilla movies, Mechagodzilla's beams, which are usually like rainbow colored, if he can deflect a beam, but only if it goes in one eye and then he shoots it out the other eye. That is such a specific ability that, like, oh my god, someone's shooting at me. I gotta dodge around to make sure they shoot me in the face. Otherwise, I'm screwed.
It does seem like a flaw.
Yeah, and I will also say the first King Caesar in this one is cooler. But the one, when I talked about Godzilla doing some of the goofy shit, the one where he and King Caesar go up against Mechagodzilla, it's very much the goofy, like, jump up and down, yay, the flying double kick, blah, all that stuff. But anyway, so this one, Godzilla Final Wars, there is a character in this movie, played by Don Fry, that, okay, you know how some people are like, oh, just think about your happy place whenever you're sad, whenever you're having a bad day. This is the guy I think about when I'm having a bad day, and it never ceases to cheer me up. This dude is the American dude in a Godzilla movie. He is so American, it hurts. He's got a big Tom Selleck mustache. He's got a scruffy voice. He wears a trench coat. He's muscular as shit. He takes nonsense from no one. He is a fucking badass. He's also one of the characters in this that uses a Japanese katana, which is a little weird, but I will allow it. He speaks in English in this movie, in the original movie, where everyone around him is speaking Japanese. He has people say something to him in Japanese, and he responds in English. I hope and pray that Don Fry does not speak Japanese, because how fucking funny is it to think of this poor man giving it his all when he has no idea what is being said to him. He just knows that this guy looks at me and he talks until he stops talking, and I go, cool, gotcha. I have no idea what that dude just said to me. It is fucking hilarious. I love it so much. This dude is the main character of the Godzilla universe. I love him. I love him. I love him. I oh my god, fucking love this movie. Don't you give me shit. You know he's fucking awesome. He is literally what I imagine a lot of Japanese people when they think of like the stereotypical macho American. That is exactly who they think of.
Probably. That's probably why he's in this movie.
That's fair. We also looked it up earlier. He was in his 30s in this movie. Homeboy's got some city miles on him because he does not look 30 in this movie.
Well, he's a professional wrestler, right?
Yeah, that's fair. I think the really big mustache immediately ages him almost like a beard does.
Yeah.
But this movie is one of the ones where, yes, the human stuff is a little weird. It's a little melodramatic in Godzilla. The idea of having the mutants is whatever. But what I really like about it is the fact that in this universe, in this particular movie, the humans are actively fighting back against kaiju. They have these big... The design of it is something that I feel like was maybe a joke. Like, hey, what if we put a giant drill head on a submarine? And someone heard that and is like, sold! Make 20 of them! And yeah, Don Fry's character in this is the, I guess, like captain of one of them. They are fighting back against the kaiju. The aliens show up and start summoning a lot of kaiju back. So I will say that everything that I listed earlier, so all of the monsters that I listed, the only one that has their like debut in this movie is Monster X, and for the Japanese part, Zilla. So they're basically like bringing back all of the greatest hits of Godzilla monsters. Most of them are not drawn out fights. When Zilla shows up, that fight is about 25 seconds long. Yeah.
They just kind of crush the Sydney Opera House.
Yeah, it is literally Godzilla sees it, like, that's weird. Tries to atomic breath it. It acts like it's really fast, and it jumps past Godzilla. Godzilla tail whops this thing into the Sydney Opera House, and then just atomic breaths the Sydney Opera House, and then keeps going.
If that doesn't tell you exactly what the producers thought of the TriStar.
Yeah,
Godzilla
like
movie.
that is the final nail in the coffin. Freaking Hedorah, the smog monster, he just gets like thrown in from off screen.
Yeah.
He gets like thrown into, God, I don't even remember which one, because there is a montage of Godzilla just obliterating these monsters. I mean, it is just one after another, after another, after another. It is heavy metal as shit. The music is fantastic. The atomic breaths are awesome. Yeah, the big fight tends to be when it's Monster X and Godzilla, and then kind of Mothra versus Gigan. It sort of becomes a messy 2-on-2.
Yeah.
That's like the big fight of it. But yeah, this movie is fantastic. The humans do fight back. They destroy Ebra, the giant lobster. They saw like Gigan, and they saw King Caesar and Anguirus, and then they saw the lobster, and they're like, that's the one we'll take. Godzilla can take the other 35. We call dibs. We're gonna kill the lobster. And then they do. They kill the lobster.
Hey, they did what they said they were gonna do.
They killed the lobster. They killed nothing else. But yeah, this movie, dude, it's a good time. It's just a good time. I think it is personally, I do think it is the perfect send-off of the Millennium era, because it very much is a pull out the roster. Again, the music's fantastic. This is peak Godzilla for me, because again, I feel like the CGI and the practical meet really well in this one. The story, of course, it's ridiculous, but I'm okay with it. The American dude has a Japanese katana fight with an alien. I don't give a shit. I'm here for it. Some of the mutants don't like each other. Fucking all right. Go fight a lobster together. I don't give a shit. But it's just a good time, man.
Yeah.
This was one that, because when I mentioned Tokyo SOS being a really good gateway one, I have told people, I'm like, do not start with Final Wars. Despite the fact it is my favorite, do not start with it, because if you don't recognize like any of the monsters, you are missing out on so much of the extra enjoyment of getting to see them. It really would be like going to Endgame and Captain America's the only one you know.
Yeah.
When everyone shows up, you're like, that's a lot of people. No. That's not as cool.
Yeah.
You got to get all the precursor stuff into it.
You got to watch all 20 movies.
Yeah. This one, you only got to watch 27, and you're great. I mean, technically, no, 26, because Godzilla's the only one in the first one. Boom, you already know Godzilla. Cool, one down.
There you go.
Yeah. It's so much fun, dude. I fucking love this one. I do really like the Monster X design. I think it's really cool. The color scheme is really cool.
Yeah.
Again, I wish it didn't just become another Ghidorah.
Yeah.
So I will also say that with this one being in 2004, this is, at least up to now, the final Godzilla movie where they were still using practical Godzillas.
Yeah.
Because after this, you do get pure CGI creations from here on out.
Yeah.
You know, all of the Japanese ones from here on out are either fully animated movies or they've got live action people animating Godzilla.
Yeah.
And all the American movies
are full CGI.
Yeah, full CGI for all of the monsters.
Especially based on what the trailer showed of Godzilla X Kong, the new empire. Like,
yeah,
that the scenes of them running as the earth like shatters around them is particularly interesting.
Yeah, I do like the. I know a lot of people got really mad about the pink effect for Godzilla. I mean, people are gonna get mad about anything at this point. But I'm okay with it. I know color scheme wise, a lot of people do associate it with the color that was used for Godzilla in Godzilla 2000. He does have a very pink hue on him in that one. But yeah, so then after this, we do have Godzilla 2014 that we are into Legendary Pictures, the official Monsterverse.
Yeah.
So this one is the one that we talked about a bit earlier with Bryan Cranston getting killed. Oh, so sad. Ken Watanabe is in this one as Serizawa. He is always a good time. Ken Watanabe should be in so many more movies. Love him so much. This one does, I think, a really good job, like we mentioned a bit earlier, where it's almost like the focus is not on the monsters. They are part of the story. They are obviously a big part of the story. When you do see them, typically the fights are pretty dark.
Yeah.
It is a much more human-centric story, human-centric focus. The scene where they've jumped out of the airplane, or hell, I think it's airplane, and they're coming down on the city, and it's really quiet, and you hear the breathing, you see it was used very widely in the trailers, very smartly, I would say, because it is a killer fucking shot. It is so cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of really great stuff in 2014 from filmmaking standpoint, story standpoint. They do a really good job of balancing the human story with the monster. Like you said, there is more human story to it because they're trying to ground it more, I suppose, in that thing. But the human story is actually pretty compelling at the same time. So then you have that going for it. The same, I don't feel, can really be said for King of the Monsters.
No, King of the Monsters, they very much unbalanced it.
Yeah.
It works for me because we almost get a little bit of I really like those big roster monster ones. I love Final Wars. I do like that we get to see a bit more. I mean, we don't get to see some of them do stuff. Yeah. This is also the first version of Rodan that I've ever really liked. Rodan to me, it's always like, it's pterodactyl. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everything with the monsters was really good. In King of the Monsters.
Yeah, not even Charles Dance could save the human side.
Yeah, Rodan, Hedorah, Godzilla, and Mothra were all they made me care about a relationship between Godzilla and Mothra. Come on.
It was good. It was done really well. You know, the whale song thing, I can roll with it. Yeah. Yeah, Millie Bobby Brown, I think, is fine. I like the guy that plays her dad.
Yeah, I love Kyle Chandler. And Vera Farmiga is the mother. I love everything Kyle Chandler is in.
Dude, he's so good.
He's really good.
He's just such a likable person.
Yeah. And Vera Farmiga, of course, is very good.
I like her. I do not like this character.
No,
this character annoys the hell out of me.
This character is very unlikable.
Yeah, which I do believe is obviously on purpose.
Yeah, it's on purpose, but it's fine to make a character unlikable if they're supposed to be unlikable, but you can easily go too far with it. And I think they went too far with it in King of the Monsters. I remember very much disliking any time she was on screen.
I was a little mixed because Charles Dance is one of my favorite human beings in the history of human beings.
Yeah.
He's got some pretty good lines in this.
Yeah.
Like that one about like "Hail to the King" or whatnot that he says. That's a really good line. Him having the head at the end, I think, is a really good setup for future stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one thing for the story though is in the 2014 one, the main character, he is the son of Bryan Cranston.
Yeah.
The mom/wife, she dies in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, at the power plant.
Yeah. So in this one, where you've got the family, you've got the mom, the dad, and the daughter. Yeah. It is told through you in story and I think a few flashbacks that in a Godzilla fight attack earlier at some point in time, their son/brother was killed.
Yeah.
So there's a very big split in the family between the dad and then the mom and obviously the daughter. It's not. It just doesn't draw me in as much.
Yeah, I don't. It wasn't very well written. The whole human story, and they went too far.
Yeah.
Which I know they're trying to incorporate more of. Obviously, Millie Bobby Brown is very popular at this time because of Stranger Things, and then you're also trying to set up this whole big universe, the MonsterVerse, by having Charles Dance, having the organization. Killing off Ken Watanabe's character.
Yes, God, I hate it because I love him so much, and I really do enjoy the character. But the way that he goes is so good.
That is very well written.
Yeah,
that storyline, that plot line, and ultimately that sacrifice to help save Godzilla and bring him back.
And he sells it so well.
Yeah,
I do think there's an alternate version of this story where it's really funny because he puts the bomb like right next to Godzilla. How funny would it be if he was too weak and they just looked down there like, oh God, what happened? We blew his head off. Oh God, what are we gonna do?
We killed Godzilla.
Also, I can't believe neither of us have mentioned fucking Bradley Whitford being in this movie yet.
I completely forgot Bradley Whitford was in this
movie. Dude, he's so good. He, yet again, one of those people, you love him in everything.
Yeah, I've never seen a bad Bradley Whitford performance.
No. He is so good, and he's so snarky without being like disliked.
Yeah. He's always been very good at that, though.
Yes. Yeah, I really do enjoy him. There is also another person in here, so I do also really like Aisha Hines in this. She plays a colonel. She is very much like the military person in this. I really like her character because it would have been very easy to make her just 100% militaristic and very cold, and she's not. I find her to be a very humanizing character in this, but she's also a fucking badass in this. Yeah. When they are in their big, I don't really know exactly what it's called. It's kind of like it almost makes me think of like the helicarrier in Avatar, or it's aircraft, but it's really big. When they're being chased by Rodan, and he's like right on their ass. I'm like, I cannot believe everyone is not wetting themselves on the bridge of this thing right now.
Yeah.
But there's so many great action shots in this. When Ghidorah first rises out of the ice and the lightning is, oh my god, so good. Yeah, the lightning coming down, it's so freaking cool. When Godzilla has the Mothra power and he's just blowing Ghidorah to pieces, it's so freaking cool. The images of like Methuselah and the other Mutos and Kong dramatically walking away into the distance, whatever, all of those are really cool. The scene where I mentioned that I liked Rodan in this one, when Rodan has all of the jets around him and he just fucking flips in midair and just wipes them out. You're like, shit. And then all he does is fly. Rodan in this is huge. And when he flies over that one like village, he just destroys it. Completely fucking wipes it off the face of the map by flying. That, I think, is a really cool thing because it shows you just the raw power these things have. We tend to see the destruction when there's atomic breaths going and they're yeeting each other across with telekinetic powers. You see the destruction there. Yeah. But the fact that all this dude did was fucking fly. And he just obliterates this entire village. One of the storylines in this is the idea that our world is getting messed up the way it is because the kaiju in this... So we have been using the term kaiju a lot for this. It's still technically accurate, but in the MonsterVerse, they do call them Titans.
Yeah.
Cool. We can roll with it. So Charles Dance in particular, his character, who is a bioterrorist, Cool. Or eco-terrorist.
Yeah.
Cool. I can roll with it. Charles Dance. Fuck yeah. By the way, if anyone happens to not know his name, he was Tywin Lannister on Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
He's been a lot of other things, but I kind of feel like that's probably one of his most well-known.
That's probably where most people probably know him at this point.
Yeah. Fucking great. Love him. So good. He does talk about how one of the reasons why the world is in the current condition that is in. So when they are talking about like the balance of the world, one of the things that he talks about is the fact that at least for his beliefs, is if the world gets to a point where the humans have done too much damage to it, the Titans are supposed to come back and be like this force of nature to try to rebalance it.
Yeah.
They do show scenes on this where areas after Titan attacks or after Titan sightings, it's almost like the vegetation comes back, the life comes back into it. So I will give them that. I think that it, because it's when you think about like, who the fuck is out here summoning King Ghidorah? What the fuck is wrong with you people?
Yeah.
When he explains it, I'm like, I get it.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea. It's kind of similar to like the beginning of Endgame, where it's post-snap, and they talk about how like whales were seen in the Hudson River, and like they're talking about how like the environment has cleared up so much and all that, and it's like, yeah, all of that stuff sounds great, but at the same time, like,
had to kill a lot of people to get there.
Mass loss, like, how do you balance that?
Yeah, that is fair.
So,
yeah, and we do get the scene where the other Titans at the end of the movie, they are all of them except Kong. They are very appropriately bowing to the king of the monsters. You get that awesome image of Godzilla doing the power pose to roar into the heavens. I'm like, fuck yeah, Godzilla, this is what's up.
Yeah.
So when this one ends, there is this great thing where he crushes King Ghidorah. Like, Ghidorah's on the ground, foot on chest, crushes him. I do think it's a really cool thing that you see Ghidorah's lightning like coming out of his chest. I think that's really cool. It's a little fucked up. It's kind of like his intestines coming out, but it's fine. And then there's this shot where he just obliterates Ghidorah, and then the way the camera angle is, it makes it look for a minute like one of the Ghidorah heads is like, oh my god, it's still alive. No, it's in Godzilla's mouth.
Yeah. And
then he just fucking atomic breaths it into oblivion. Cool. Well, at the very end of the movie, we do see... I will say they took this not in a direction I thought they were. I assumed Mecha King Ghidorah was the next thing, because you do see at the end that Charles Dance's character has some of the remains of Ghidorah, specifically one of the heads. If you don't know, there are 3 of them.
Yeah.
So I really did think Mecha King Ghidorah was coming next. The next movie from 2021 is Godzilla vs. Kong. This one, it's weird, man. It's pretty slow. I do love watching King Kong get his butt whooped by Godzilla. But, so Millie Bobby Brown's character is in this one. Again, she teams up with 2 individuals. One of them is a character played by Brian Henry, Bernie Hayes. I think I mostly know him from The Eternals.
Yeah, Brian Tyree Henry.
Yeah, where he was the like the tech person who was making all these crazy inventions.
Yeah.
He is so fucking funny in this movie. He is this crazy conspiracy theorist, but he's very smart. He like buys bleach in wholesale. He's so crazy. Of course, he turns out to be right about everything. So in this one, Godzilla is showing up seemingly randomly throughout the world and attacking facilities, particularly monarch facilities. And everyone's like, what the hell? Why is Godzilla going crazy? Well, it turns out at the end that they have been creating Mechagodzilla. And yeah, this one's a little weird, where the son of Serizawa from the previous movie, Ken Watanabe's character, he has a psychic uplink to Mechagodzilla where he controls it through the skull of King Ghidorah. It's one of those things where the less you question it, the finer it is. It's weird. Even I'm like, okay, that's dumb.
Sure.
But the idea is that he is controlling Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla does have a pretty serious rework in this. He does not look like he has up to this point. He's very big too. So Godzilla and Kong, they have a few of their fights. My favorite part of this, though, is Godzilla wants to beat up Kong. At one point, he senses King Kong in the middle of the earth. He's like, oh, cool. He just looks at the ground and just starts blasting. He really does. Like, literally, the humans down there are like, oh my god, we're in trouble. You just see Godzilla's atomic breath come through the chamber. And then
yeah, that's not terrifying at all.
Kong starts climbing up, and Godzilla, I swear to God, he's up there like, ooh, I'm gonna beat the hell out of this dude. And he gets up here, I swear to God, ooh, this is gonna be good. This is gonna be good. And it is good. King Kong does get a weapon that I haven't seen. Godzilla X Kong, the newest one. I have a feeling that based on just trailers I've seen, that it probably fills in a lot of the missing information, because it very much looks like Kong is going towards his own people. He does see like paintings and things on walls where it looks like maybe that's where his people were from. He finds a weapon that is very tribal looking. It looks almost like an axe, but like a caveman style axe. This thing is able to absorb a ton of energy though. Like, he literally uses the blade of it to block Godzilla's atomic breath, and it like powers up the weapon. When they actually kill Mechagodzilla, that's how they do it. Godzilla intentionally blasts the weapon as Kong brings it down on Mechagodzilla. Okay. So that part's pretty cool. There is a definitive winner. I really didn't think there would be. If you guys have ever heard, there are a lot of actors out there, like action movie people, who they have in their contracts that they cannot be defeated on screen or some shit like that.
Yeah.
That's lame, especially when those two guys fight, because who gives a shit? You're not going to have a winner. I really thought that's what this was going to be. I really thought it was going to be like, oh, haha, they have to team up. They do, but there is a definitive winner. I mean, it is... there are a lot of moments where, like, Godzilla roars and then King Kong roars and they go at each other. Dude, no. He starts to crush Godzilla's chest like he did to King Ghidorah, and then he gets right up in Godzilla's face, or right up in King Kong's face, and just roars forever, and King Kong gives in. He doesn't roar, because he knows he's fucked. That's Godzilla. And then Godzilla starts to walk away, and then Mechagodzilla's like, surprise, motherfucker! And then they team up to fight Mechagodzilla, and it's great, and it's awesome. I also forgot to mention, I do not have the actor's name here, but one of Millie Bobby Brown's like best friend in this is played by the boy who was the young Australian boy in Deadpool 2.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's in Godzilla versus Kong. I don't know the actor's name. He's just as hilarious in this as he was in Deadpool. That kid, oh my god, his comedic timing is so good. Yeah. Him, Millie Bobby Brown, and then Brian Tyree Henry. The comedy side of those three is epic. It is so good, the whole movie. And this is one time where I was like, you know, the story is whatever. The King Ghidorah head thing is whatever. I get big monster fights and they make me laugh. I'm having a good time. And King Kong lost, so gotta throw that one in there.
Okay.
Yeah, they do actually have an interesting thing to explain, because one thing I was very curious about going into this was the size of King Kong in Skull Island versus the size of Godzilla in King of the Monsters. It would not have been a fight.
Yeah.
Godzilla was going to crush this tiny monkey. But they actually have a line where at some point in time they'll say something about King Kong getting bigger. Like they throw in, and sometimes that's all you need is one line to just throw in. Oh my god, yeah, he's getting bigger. Oh, that's weird. Yeah. The line isn't like that. It's some sciencey stuff, but that's all you need. Yeah. You know, it kills me in some movies where like a person becomes an action hero immediately, and you're like, what the hell? When I watched Rampage with Dwayne Johnson, they have like one line about he used to be in the military. I'm like, cool. That's all I need. Yeah. I need one line. That's it. So this one does that pretty well, and it does show Kong to be pretty smart, which I do enjoy. It doesn't help him. Godzilla wins. Woo! But yeah, this movie is just great. Sorry, this movie is not great. Godzilla's great. This movie's enjoyable. I will say that. I haven't seen the newest one. I've heard a lot of interesting things about it, but
I've heard nothing.
See, I've mostly heard about some of the monsters in it. I haven't really heard good or bad from a lot of people. Yeah. I also think one thing that would suck for Godzilla X Kong is that it comes out within a year of Godzilla -1. Yeah. That's a really hard standard to beat. Yeah. But, you know, they're going to keep going. I do love the idea of the Monsterverse. You know, I love the idea of seeing Destroya come back, seeing Biollante come back. already the versions they've done of, you know, Rodan, King Ghidorah, all of this stuff is already done really well from the monster side. The Mutos I thought were actually pretty cool. Those, to the best of my knowledge, were original designs for that movie.
Yeah.
I haven't seen them in anything else. And then to have one come back in King of the Monsters, I thought was cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think the MonsterVerse is doing a lot of cool stuff. It is very much like, to me, it really does feel like when the MCU started.
Yeah.
Because it's always like, ooh, what comic book are they going to do next? Who are they going to bring in next? What's going to happen next? So I know a lot of Godzilla fans that are like, please bring Space Godzilla back.
Yeah, so far, in terms of everybody who's tried to sort of replicate the Marvel formula of having this big shared universe,
yeah,
they're probably the most successful.
Dude,
like
big monsters, man.
Like, I mean, DC had a lot of movies over the last several years, but they weren't all like successful or particularly great.
Yeah, and the tie-ins on a lot of them have been kind of rough.
Yeah, it was all very much trying to fit square peg, round hole.
Yeah.
And then, Lord knows, Universal never got off the ground with their monster movies.
I'm so upset about that one.
Speaking of which, did you know that before the original Godzilla vs. Kong from way back in the day, like the 50s or 60s?
Yeah.
Before that, they wanted to have Godzilla vs. Frankenstein.
I did know
that. Was the initial. That
was
the initial plan. But then something fell through with like Universal, and they were like about Frankenstein, and they were like, okay, we're gonna do King Kong instead.
That's probably for the best.
But, yeah.
I also heard a couple years ago about the idea of bringing Pacific Rim into it.
Well, we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. But that would make a whole lot of sense, for sure, and I think that would be cool.
Yeah.
But
yeah, dude, it is so hard to talk about. Yeah, obviously from 1954 to now, so many movies, so many different interpretations, so many different tones, different monsters, different directors,
and it's had the staying power.
Dude, it's just
the biggest thing.
I just fucking love Godzilla, man.
Like,
I will say, by the way, I build gaming PCs for myself, not like I make it sound like that's my job. That's not my job. But a lot of people will put Funko Pops inside of their PC, and then they'll kind of use the color of that to like do the aesthetics and whatnot.
Yeah.
I've never done it before. My next one, I already know. I've already got the Funko Pop for it, where it is Godzilla with his atomic breath coming out. And then I'm going to get a CPU cooler that you can put an image on, and I'm going to have Godzilla's head on the CPU cooler. It's going to be sick. I'm so excited.
And then you're going to have your umbrella-themed car.
Yep.
And
then my next umbrella tattoo. Ooh, I should get a Godzilla tattoo.
Oh, Lord.
You know what's funny is the way I talk about tattoos on this, it makes it sound like I'm covered. I have one.
Yeah.
I have a lot of plans, but I only have one.
You've mentioned so many tattoos.
I do have a lot of plans.
But, yeah, Godzilla is just an interesting franchise. Think about it. I mentioned, what was it, the creature from 20,000 Leagues or whatnot. Like, I've never even heard of that movie before I read up this article. But everybody's heard of Godzilla. It's had the staying power. Godzilla just has this amazing legacy, and it's hit 70 years, and so many people love it. We think of even, like, its influence on cinema. There are some big name directors who like directly cite Godzilla as like majorly influential to them in American cinema. Tim Burton, director of Beetlejuice, Batman, and various other properties, has said of the films specifically directed by Honda that they are the most beautiful movies in the whole world. Martin Scorsese, Scorsese, Taxi Driver, Goodfellas, just so many movies, too many to name.
For a split second, I thought you were calling him a taxi driver, and I was like, I don't think I would call him that, but...
But Martin Scorsese called Godzilla movies, and specifically the first movie, pictures that haunted the imaginations of young moviegoers like myself and millions of others for years to come.
I think the craziest thing about that is to think of Martin Scorsese as young.
Yeah. Steven Spielberg Jaws, from my understanding of the original Godzilla, is very similar in withholding the creature, the viewing of the creature until a specific moment, and building suspense through that manner.
Yeah.
In 1993, when he made Jurassic Park, it kind of reflects Mothra versus Godzilla's consumerism critique.
Huh. I didn't know that one.
And in 1997, of course, he also tipped his cap to Godzilla during the final sequence in San Diego when there are men running away from the T-Rex as it stampedes through everything. And Spielberg has even said Godzilla was the most masterful of all dinosaur movies because it made you believe it was really happening.
I will say, of all the directors you just mentioned, he is the one I'm the least surprised by.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense to me.
Obviously, you mentioned Pacific Rim a little bit ago. That was Guillermo del Toro. Del Toro has said that Pacific Rim was directly inspired by the first Godzilla film, which he saw as a kid. He said it has such drama in it, and it had such a sense of tragedy. But the cumulative effect of that movie was a sense of oppression and war, and a sense of dismay and hopelessness. And in the middle of all this, there was a monster that I fell in love with.
Well, that's both depressing and uplifting at the same time.
I mean, if you know Guillermo del Toro's movies...
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, Pan's Labyrinth.
Yeah, I was like, that's literally the first one I thought of. I'm like, damn, okay. That's accurate. It does hurt my feelings that they all reference the first Godzilla and not Godzilla Final Wars, but whatever.
There's even been references that John Carpenter has made to how Godzilla influenced him as a director, and John Carpenter is like one of the kings of horror films.
Yeah.
And monster films. He made The Thing, for God's sake. Ultimately, the legacy of Godzilla really seems to be just sort of not just its length of time in history and its staying power, but also the message that it sends.
Big monster,
but also it's an ever constant critique on our fragility and how we are very much the masters of our own destruction.
Yeah,
if we want to be.
You know, really, I sort of joked about it a little bit earlier, but there are so many of these monsters that show up because of human interference.
Even Godzilla himself first shows up because of the nuclear testing, and everything about Godzilla is born out of just the Cold War tensions and fears about nuclear weapons, nuclear proliferation. It really is ironic that we ended up doing this right after Oppenheimer, because they both very much speak to the same sort of theme of humanity's capability of its own destruction.
Yeah. And see, even the fact that he's created by this nuclear blast, and then when he dies in Destroya, it's not Destroya that kills him. It is his own power.
Yeah.
Kind of ironic.
Yeah. Very, very ironic for the time. But that's what I find most interesting about Godzilla, and I look forward to checking out further films. Like I said, I'm going to check out the original. I'm very much looking forward to being able to watch Godzilla -1.
Dude, I want to see
when it comes
so
out.
Bad.
Let's see. What's the creature by Baytalan?
Oh, Biollante.
Sorry,
I was like, Berrigan?
No.
The dog that got murdered?
No, Biollante. I was reading about how that creature is formed, and it's through DNA from Godzilla mixed with
a human.
A human mixed with like a rose or something like that.
Yeah.
Like that alone makes me interested enough to go check out what exactly is going on. And then you said it's a good movie.
Yeah, that one I do think is genuinely good. That's another one where the music in particular just hits, man. There are a lot of these where the music just tends to be kind of like more background music, and then sometimes he's just like, all right, time to make them feel stuff.
Yeah. And that goes back even to the original with I'm sorry, I forgot his name, the composer. But
do you see my closed tablet?
But you mentioned how he created the iconic roar. I was reading it was through taking a double bass and just kind of running a glove that was covered in, I believe, like sap or something.
Well, that's weird.
And just doing it that way because they tried, the typical route that people go through with just taking different like real life creatures and doing all and combining them and figuring they couldn't find quite the right thing. So the composer just said, "Yeah, I'll do it myself."
Yeah,
and found that.
I do know that a lot of pretty much anyone I've ever heard talk about the roar that the Godzilla has in this movie or that movie, it is almost always either harken back to the original or a variation in some kind of the original.
Yeah.
Like it really is. Godzilla has that very iconic roar.
Yeah.
Literally, that was one thing that when Godzilla -1 came out, the first YouTube video clip I saw was Godzilla's roar at the end of -1. I'm like, of course, that's what people care about.
Yeah.
Myself included.
But, yeah. Obviously, you have a lot more love at this time than I do for this franchise, but I am very much interested in exploring aspects of it.
Yeah. I've wondered before, I'm like, what is it that makes me like Godzilla so much? And I do think a lot of these, when you watch them, it's just, he just won't stop.
Mm.
Like, he's just the calling him King of the Monsters, I think, is the most appropriate title you could ever give him.
Yeah.
When you watch him go up against these monsters, sometimes it's crazy that he just gets back up and gets back up and keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Despite the fact he doesn't have a laundry list of abilities. He's just big, he's super tough and durable, and he's got an atomic breath.
Well, I think that's kind of what it is we latch on to creatures and characters that we can see ourselves in. And so what ultimately I think has helped Godzilla stay in the public eye even so much more than even like King Kong has or something else is that we can find something to empathize with, and we can find the humanity, to lack a better word for it, in Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like his motivations, his desires. We can see ourselves in the struggle that Godzilla has, either when he's the villain or when he's the hero of the movie. And that dichotomy in and of itself really speaks to it. And I think that's where a lot of that kind of comes in.
Yeah. And sometimes you do really just want to watch big monsters.
Well, yeah,
like,
obviously.
In all seriousness, sometimes you do just want to...
Obviously, yeah. I mean, that was half the fun of watching Power Rangers back in the day. Just watching the Megazord fights.
Dude, there have been a lot of times where I'm like, I just kind of want to watch something. And I would just go to like the last 20 minutes of a Godzilla movie.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just here for the big title fight.
Just something to get the big fight going.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fair. And I know you give me hell for it sometimes because I don't quite separate it quite as well as you. But I can appreciate that. That was definitely the most fun of watching like Godzilla 2000 and and Final Wars and the other Godzillas I've seen, or just seeing those final fights and just sort of
just enjoying them.
Yeah, just having fun.
Yeah. But I think that pretty much is everything we have to say about Godzilla, at least for now. I have a feeling we might be revisiting this sometime later. Maybe get into more of the history stuff, or talking about a specific movie here or there.
Yeah, we'll always reserve the right to return to a specific movie or something like that. We have all kinds of plans going forward, and we keep on going. And if you guys want to hear us talk about a specific one or something specific in general, let us know. Tell us what you think about Godzilla. Do you love it? Do you hate it?
If you do like it, what's your favorite movie?
Yeah.
Top 3, not just one. Top 3. I am so interested in the top 3. Because if someone gives me one Godzilla movie, I'm like, okay. But if they give me 3 and it's like from 3 different eras, I'm like, ooh, okay. Or if it's 3 in an order, I'm like, okay. Or if it's just like the original -1 and then one in the middle, I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
That's fair. Kind of hard to argue that.
But yeah, let us know. We'd love to hear what y'all think about Godzilla.
But in the meantime, I'm Bradley.
And I'm Brendan.
And this has been Story Proof.